In a world where economic struggles and security concerns dominate the political landscape of developing nations, a bold decision from Burkina Faso's President Ibrahim Traoré has shocked many. He recently turned down a €220 million deal from a French company, a move that sent ripples across the geopolitical landscape of Africa and beyond. At the heart of this decision was a project to construct a new international airport in the capital, Ouagadougou, a project that on the surface promised modernization and economic benefits for the country. So why would a president, particularly one leading a nation with financial and security challenges, reject such an enormous offer? Welcome back to the channel where we explore global issues with depth and insight. If you haven't already, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss out on future updates. Today we're diving deep into the intricate layers of this bold decision by Burkina Faso, unpacking the reasons behind President Traoré's rejection, the historical context of such deals in Africa, and the broader implications for the continent's future. This is a story that goes far beyond one airport. It's about a fight for sovereignty, economic justice, and a redefinition of leadership in Africa. The €220 million deal Traoré rejected wasn't his brainchild. To fully understand the decision, we need to rewind to October 2021, when Burkina Faso's former president, Marc-Christian Kabore, signed the agreement with the French infrastructure company, Meridiam. The deal looked impressive on paper. Meridiam, a company with global experience in infrastructure projects, would design, finance, build, and operate a new international airport. This airport was intended to replace the aging one in Ouagadougou, built in the 1960s, and was expected to become a modern gateway for the landlocked country. The promise of job creation, enhanced global connectivity, and increased revenues for the government made it seem like a positive deal at first glance. However, what was less visible in the fine print would eventually unravel the illusion of mutual benefit. The deal granted Meridiam a staggering 30-year concession to operate the airport, during which time the company would control all revenues generated by the airport. And here's where the cracks in the agreement start to show. Despite controlling the airport for 3 decades, Meridiam wasn't the primary funder of the project. The loans to finance the construction were primarily taken out by the Burkinabe government from international financial institutions like the World Bank and the African Development Bank. In other words, while Burkina Faso would shoulder the debt, Meridiam would collect the profits. It was a deal designed to benefit the foreign company while leaving Burkina Faso with long-term financial obligations. But that wasn't all. The taxation regime outlined in the contract was another red flag. Under the terms of the agreement, Meridiam would pay minimal taxes throughout the concession period, further limiting Burkina Faso's ability to benefit from the project. These terms effectively handed over one of the country's key infrastructure projects to a foreign company while burdening the local economy with debt and limited financial gain. When Traoré's administration took a closer look at the deal, it became clear that something had to be done. Traoré's rejection of the airport deal isn't just a one-off event. It's part of a larger, more troubling pattern that has plagued Africa for decades. This deal is emblematic of the relationship between many African nations and foreign entities, whether from Europe, the United States, or China. When African nations embark on large-scale infrastructure projects, whether airports, highways, or railways, they often find themselves reliant on foreign companies to get the job done. But why is that? Is it because African countries lack the expertise to build their own infrastructure? Or is there something more insidious at play? Many would argue it's the latter. The global system has in many ways structured African nations to depend on foreign entities for large-scale development. The result is a vicious cycle of dependency that, more often than not, leads to exploitation. These deals often look attractive at first, but once signed, they turn out to be heavily skewed in favor of the foreign companies involved. Long-term concessions, favorable tax regimes, and control over vital infrastructure assets become the norm. Meanwhile, the African countries involved are left with mounting debt and limited ownership over their own resources. This is why Traoré's decision to reject the deal is so significant. It's not just about an airport, it's about breaking the chains of economic dependency and exploitation that have kept Africa's potential shackled for generations. By rejecting this deal, Traoré is saying that Burkina Faso, and Africa at large, can no longer be treated as a pawn in the economic games of foreign powers. Let's break down the specifics of why President Traoré pulled the plug on the airport project. First and foremost, the 30-year concession was simply too long, particularly given how little financial input Meridiam was offering. Essentially, the French company would have been handed the keys to the country's aviation future for 3 decades, while Burkina Faso bore the brunt of the financial risk. Moreover, the taxation regime included in the deal was disproportionately favorable to Meridiam. For the entirety of the concession period, Meridiam would have paid only minimal taxes to Burkina Faso, meaning the country wouldn't just lose out on the airport's profits, it would also see very little benefit in the form of tax revenue. Burkina Faso would essentially be financing the construction and operations of the airport with its loans, but seeing very little in return. The more Traoré's administration examined the agreement, the clearer it became that this deal was not in the national interest. In a public statement, the country's transport minister explained that there were several breaches in the contract, including provisions that didn't align with national and international civil aviation laws. Additionally, Meridiam's financial contribution was termed derisory, meaning it was insufficient to justify such a long concession period. This was not a deal designed to benefit Burkina Faso, it was a deal that favored foreign interests. And Traoré wasn't willing to allow his country to be trapped in another exploitative agreement that would cripple its economy for decades to come. A new standard for African leadership: what Traoré's decision represents. By rejecting the airport deal, President Traoré is sending a clear message not only to Burkina Faso, but to the world. The days of one-sided agreements that benefit foreign companies at the expense of African nations are numbered. This is a new standard of leadership for Africa, one that prioritizes the long-term interests of its people and economy over the short-term gains promised by foreign investors. Traoré's leadership reflects a growing sentiment across the continent. More and more African leaders are waking up to the fact that foreign companies often exploit Africa's resources, leaving the countries themselves with little to show for it. Whether it's oil, minerals, or infrastructure, African countries have for too long been at the mercy of foreign powers. But Traoré's decision is part of a broader movement to reclaim control over Africa's resources and future. Seeking fairer deals, a new approach to development. Traoré is not opposed to foreign investment or development. In fact, his administration is actively seeking new partners to finance and build the airport, but under fairer terms. According to reports, Burkina Faso is in talks with several credible partners who are willing to enter into agreements that prioritize the country's interests. This means finding a financing model that allows Burkina Faso to retain control over its infrastructure while still reaping the economic benefits. This approach is a model for what African nations can achieve when they stand firm and demand better terms. It's about creating partnerships that are mutually beneficial rather than exploitative. By negotiating for better deals, Burkina Faso can ensure that its infrastructure projects benefit the country and its people, rather than lining the pockets of foreign corporations. Short-term pain, long-term gain, the impact of the decision. Of course, Traoré's decision to cancel the airport deal does come with short-term consequences. The current international airport in Ouagadougou, built in the 1960s, is outdated and struggles to keep up with growing passenger traffic. The new airport was supposed to modernize the country's infrastructure, increase its connectivity to the world, and generate revenue. With the deal now off the table, the construction of the new airport will be delayed. But in the long run, this delay could work in Burkina Faso's favor. By taking the time to find more equitable partners and negotiate better terms, the country will ultimately secure a deal that benefits its economy, its people, and its future. The short-term sacrifice of delaying the project is a necessary step toward long-term economic sovereignty and self-reliance. A blueprint for Africa. What this means for the continent. President Traoré's decision is about more than just one airport in Burkina Faso. It's about setting a precedent for African countries as a whole. It's about demonstrating that Africa no longer has to accept exploitative deals from foreign companies. African nations have the power to take control of their resources, develop their own industries, and create partnerships that benefit both sides. One of the most powerful aspects of this decision is the example it sets for other African leaders. Burkina Faso's move can inspire other nations to rethink their relationships with foreign companies and take steps to protect their own interests. The broader message is that Africa can and should control its own destiny, and it's time for the continent to demand fairer terms in its dealings with the world. Building local capacity, the path forward for African nations. The rejection of the airport deal raises an important question. What is the long-term solution for Africa's infrastructure challenges? The answer lies in building local industries and capacity. Imagine if Burkina Faso had its own construction companies capable of building airports, railways, and highways. There would be no need to rely on foreign companies like Meridiam. Local industries could create jobs, stimulate the economy, and keep profits within the country's borders. This vision is what leaders like Traoré are advocating for, a future where African countries are no longer dependent on foreign expertise and capital for their development. By investing in education, training, and local industries, African nations can break the cycle of dependency and build a future that is truly their own. Conclusion: a defining moment for Burkina Faso and Africa. In rejecting the €220 million deal with France, President Ibrahim Traoré has made a bold and necessary decision for Burkina Faso's future. This decision goes beyond the construction of an airport. It's about breaking free from the cycle of dependency that has held Africa back for decades. By standing up to unfair deals and prioritizing his country's interests, Traoré is setting a new standard for African leadership. But what do you think? Was Traoré's decision the right one? Should Burkina Faso have accepted the deal to move forward with the airport project, or did the president make the right call by rejecting it? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below, and please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel by clicking the subscribe button next to the bell icon. Thank you.